She never meant to fall asleep on a stranger's shoulder, but when the plane touched down and her eyes fluttered open, she realized she wasn't just waking up from sleep, she was waking up to something deeper. The woman who had spent her life in glass towers and polished boardrooms suddenly found herself crying, not from embarrassment, but from something that man beside her had done while she slept. This isn't just a story about an awkward flight. It's a story about kindness, the kind that melts walls, heals tired hearts, and reminds us that sometimes strangers show us what truly matters. It was a cold November morning at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, the kind where the sky still clings to the night at 6 a.m., and the floor shines like trapped starlight under the terminal lights. Flight 292 to Washington, D.C. was boarding, and in seat 14B sat Sana Price, minus 38 years old, CEO of a fast-growing tech company that built financial software for minority-owned businesses. Her assistant had booked this last-minute flight after a week of endless meetings and no sleep. Sana was exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that coffee couldn't cure, the kind that lived in your bones. Her dark brown skin still glowed under perfect makeup, but no concealer could hide the shadows beneath her eyes. She wore her usual navy suit, fitted perfectly to her slim frame, her natural hair pulled into a neat low bun. Her phone never left her hand. She was answering emails, checking contracts, reviewing projections. To her, every second had value. Time was money. Small talk was a waste of both. Success had cost her more than she liked to admit, to broken relationships, parents who believed she'd outgrown them, and friendships that had faded from neglect. She was the picture of success and of loneliness. As passengers dragged suitcases and balanced paper cups of coffee, Sana barely looked up. She silently hoped whoever sat beside her wouldn't talk. She had a presentation to revise, a mid-flight conference call, and no interest in idle conversation. Then came seat 14A. A man in his mid-30s appeared in the aisle, a black man with kind brown eyes, sienna-toned skin, and a few days' worth of stubble. He wore faded jeans and a gray sweater that had seen better days. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't him. It was the tiny hand holding his. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with big curls tied into two puffs with bright pink ribbons. She wore a unicorn backpack almost bigger than her, and her wide eyes scanned everything around her. The windows, the passengers, the plane itself, with innocent wonder. "Hi there," the man said with a gentle smile as he helped the little girl into the window seat. "Sorry if she gets a bit restless. Long flight for little legs." Sana barely glanced up. "It's fine," she murmured, her thumbs tapping away at her phone. "I'm Malik," the man added, tightening his daughter's seatbelt with practiced hands. "And this is Zuri." The little girl peeked up shyly. "Hi," she whispered. Her voice was soft and sweet, like a note from a music box. Sana forced a polite smile and went back to typing. But something about them caught her attention anyway. The way Malik tucked the blanket around his daughter's shoulders, adjusting it so carefully you'd think she was made of glass. The way he brushed a curl from her forehead and whispered, "Comfy, baby girl?" "Yes, Daddy," she mumbled, clutching a stuffed bunny whose fur was worn thin from years of love. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Malik pointed at the safety card, explaining things in that calm, patient voice only good fathers seem to have. "See those masks? They're for emergencies. And when we fly through clouds, it might shake a little, but Daddy's right here. You're safe with me." Zuri nodded, eyes wide. "Always safe." "Always," Malik said softly, squeezing her hand. Sana found herself listening even though she didn't mean to. His voice was steady and warm, filled with a quiet strength. When the plane lifted into the air and the city shrank beneath them, Zuri pressed her nose against the window. "Look, Daddy, the cars look like toys." "They do," Malik chuckled. "Somewhere down there is our house. You can't see it, but it's waiting for us." Sana noticed his choice of words. House, not home. The difference said more than he realized. About 30 minutes into the flight, the cabin lights dimmed. The hum of the engine became a lullaby. Zuri fell asleep, her small head resting on Malik's arm, the bunny tucked close. Malik looked out the window quietly, lost in thought. There was a trace of sadness around his eyes, The kind that comes from living through something painful but surviving anyway. Sana tried to focus on her work, but her attention kept drifting. Something about them, the simplicity, the warmth, felt foreign yet familiar. They didn't have much, that was obvious, but they had something money couldn't buy. After breakfast service, Sana declined the bland meal and rubbed her temples. She'd been awake since 3 a.m., and the exhaustion was winning. Just a few minutes, she told herself, closing her eyes. Just a few. She never meant to fall asleep, but she did deeply, completely, her head tilting until it came to rest on Malik's shoulder. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just stayed still, his arms supporting both his daughter and a stranger. When Sana woke nearly 2 hours later, her first feeling was warmth. Then came panic. Her cheek was pressed against soft fabric, her chin slightly damp. She realized in horror that she had drooled on him. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she blurted, sitting up so fast her neck cracked. I never," Malik chuckled softly. "It's fine. You look like you needed the rest." "I'm mortified," she muttered, wiping her mouth. "I don't usually really, it's okay," he said gently. "Zuri falls asleep on me all the time. One more person won't hurt." Sana tried to smile, embarrassed beyond belief, but then she noticed something. Her phone, which had been on her lap when she fell asleep, was now plugged into a power bank she didn't recognize. "I think this is yours," she said, holding it up. Malik nodded with a small, sheepish grin. "Yeah, your battery was at 3%. Didn't want you waking up to a dead phone. Figured it might be important." Sana blinked. In her world, people took advantage. They never gave. The idea that a stranger would use his own charger to help her, without asking for anything, was almost unbelievable. "Thank you," she said quietly. For once, the words felt real. Malik shrugged. "We all need a little help sometimes." That simple sentence, spoken so easily, touched something deep inside her. For years, she'd believed she didn't need anyone. She'd built a life around that belief. And yet, here she was, realizing how wrong she'd been. They started talking after that, at first awkwardly, then more naturally, like two people remembering how to be human again. "So," Malik said after a moment, adjusting Zuri's blanket, "business trip." Sana nodded. "Yeah, conference in DC. I run a tech company. We build financial software for minority-owned businesses." "Sounds impressive," Malik said with a simple nod. There was no envy in his tone, no awe, just quiet respect. "You must be good at what you do." "I work hard at it," she replied. He smiled slightly. "That's not the same as loving it, though, is it?" Sana looked up, a little startled. His voice was calm, but his words landed deep. She thought for a second, then sighed. "No, it's not. I used to love it when I was building it, back when it was about ideas and helping people. Now it's just meetings, reports, and pressure. Too many people depending on me. Too many expectations." Malik nodded, his gaze steady. "I get that. Different world, but same feeling. Sometimes the thing we chase so hard ends up being the thing that weighs us down." For a moment, Sana just stared at him. Here was a man with no fancy title, no expensive clothes. Yet he spoke with more wisdom than half the executives she'd ever met. "What do you do?" she asked. "I work at a hardware store during the day," he said. "Assistant manager. And on evenings or weekends, I deliver packages when my mom can watch Zuri." "Two jobs?" she asked, surprised. "Yeah," he said with a quiet smile. "Gotta keep the lights on and the fridge full. It's not what I dreamed of doing, but it pays the bills." Sana wanted to ask more, but before she could, Malik's tone softened. "I wasn't always doing this, though. I studied to be a teacher once. Wanted to teach history, but life had other plans." "What happened?" Malik hesitated, his eyes drifting to the small hand resting against his arm, Zuri's hand. "My wife, Aisha, passed away 3 years ago," he said softly. "Car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. She was on her way to pick up Zuri from daycare." Sana froze. "I'm so sorry." He nodded slowly. "It was sudden. She was the love of my life. We met in college, got married young. We didn't have much, but we were happy. She had the biggest laugh, the kind that made you forget everything bad for a while." He smiled faintly, his voice trembling. Sometimes I still turn to tell her something funny, Zuri said. And then I remember. It still hits hard. Sana didn't interrupt. She didn't know what to say, so she just listened, really listened. But I keep going, Malik said quietly. Because of her. Because of Zuri. Some days it feels impossible, but then I look at that little face, and I see Aisha's smile. Her spirit, her love. That's what keeps me going. That's what love really means. Keeping on, even when you don't want to. Sana felt something shift inside her, a deep ache she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. I can't imagine how hard that must be, she said softly. Some days are worse than others, he admitted. Birthdays, holidays, the first day of school. But we make it through. He looked down at his daughter, still sleeping peacefully. She deserves joy, so I do whatever it takes to give her that. Sana watched the way he looked at Zuri, pure love, patient and steady. She couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her that way. She found herself talking before she even realized it. I built my company from nothing, she said, her voice quiet. Worked non-stop for years. Missed birthdays, dinners, family gatherings. I thought once I made it, I'd feel something, fulfilled, happy. But I don't. I just feel tired. Malik's eyes softened. Sometimes we spend so long climbing that we forget why we started. She nodded, staring at her hands, the manicured nails, the designer watch. I missed my mom's birthday last month because of a meeting. She sent me a text saying she understood, but I could feel the disappointment behind it. I've built this whole life, and it looks perfect from the outside. But on the inside, it's lonely. Malik didn't rush to comfort her or offer easy answers. He just nodded slowly, understanding. I think we all lose ourselves at some point, he said quietly. The trick is finding our way back before it's too late. For the first time in years, Sana felt seen. Not as a CEO or a leader, just as a person. When the flight attendant came by with the snack cart, Malik glanced at the menu. Can I get a juice box for my daughter? He asked politely. Of course, the attendant said kindly. And for you? Just water, thank you. Sana noticed his hesitation, the quick mental math as he looked at the prices. He declined the sandwich politely, but she'd already heard his stomach growl earlier. She noticed the way he'd tightened his belt that morning, details she never would have noticed before. When Malik went to the restroom later, Sana quietly called the flight attendant over. The man in one for A, she whispered. Please bring him a meal, the best one you have. Charge it to my card. The attendant smiled knowingly. Of course. When Malik returned, he paused, confused. There was a tray waiting for him, a warm meal, salad, chips, a cookie, and a soda. I didn't order this, he said, puzzled. Sana didn't look up from her phone. Consider it a thank you. For the charger, and for sharing your story. Malik's eyes glistened slightly. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she said simply. He smiled, quietly touched. Thank you, he said. It's been a while since someone's done something like this for me. He ate slowly, savoring each bite. When Zuri woke up halfway through, she looked at his plate and whispered, That looks yummy, Daddy. Malik smiled, breaking his cookie in half. Here, baby girl, you can have this piece. Sana noticed again how naturally he gave, even when he had little. They talked more as the flight went on. Malik shared stories about Zuri's school, a small private academy that focused on reading and creativity. She's already reading above her grade level, he said proudly, showing Sana a picture of Zuri holding a certificate for most improved reader. That's incredible, Sana said, genuinely smiling. She loves it there, Malik said. It's expensive, but I'll do whatever it takes to keep her in that school. She deserves the best start I can give her. Sana felt a lump in her throat. She'd met powerful people who wouldn't sacrifice an hour for their children. Yet this man was giving everything for his little girl. You're a good father, she said quietly. I'm trying, he replied, smiling faintly. That's all any of us can do, try our best and hope it's enough. As the plane began its slow descent toward Washington, D.C., the hum of the engine softened, and the cabin lights brightened. Zuri stirred, rubbing her sleepy eyes with her tiny fists. Her curls were messy now, and her bunny was squished between her and Malik's arm. Did you sleep good? She asked Sana with innocent curiosity, her words slightly slurred in that sweet, childlike way. Sana laughed softly. I did, thanks to your dad's shoulder. Zuri grinned proudly. Daddy's shoulders are the best. They're good for sleeping and for sitting on when I can't see at parades. Sana smiled, glancing at Malik, who shook his head, laughing under his breath. As passengers unbuckled and reached for the overhead bins, Sana found herself wishing the flight wasn't over. Something had shifted in her during those few hours, something she couldn't quite name. Malik lifted Zuri's unicorn suitcase down and waited patiently for the crowd to move. Sana turned toward him, hesitating for a moment before speaking. Hey, do you have a business card or maybe an email? I'd like to send you something. Malik chuckled softly. I don't have fancy cards like you probably do. Just a guy with a phone number. Write it down then, she insisted, surprising herself with how much she wanted to keep in touch. He hesitated for a second, torn between humility and pride. Finally, he reached into the seat pocket, pulled out a napkin, and scribbled his number. Here, he said, handing it to her. But you really don't have to send anything. You've already been too kind. I want to, she said sincerely, folding the napkin carefully before slipping it into her bag. They walked together toward baggage claim, Zuri holding her father's hand and dragging her small suitcase, covered in bright stickers. As they reached the carousel, Malik smiled warmly. It was nice meeting you, Sana. Likewise, she replied softly. Zuri turned and waved as they started to leave. Bye, Miss Sana. Thank you for being Daddy's friend. Sana's heart clenched. Friend. The word hit deeper than it should have. She couldn't remember the last time someone called her that, without expectation, without business behind it. She stood there, watching them disappear into the crowd, Malik bending down to listen to Zuri's excited chatter, her little backpack bouncing with each step. And for the first time in years, Sana Price, the woman who ruled boardrooms and deadlines, felt tears well up for something she didn't quite understand. That night, in her hotel room overlooking the Washington Monument, Sana sat on the edge of her bed, her phone silent beside her. She was supposed to be preparing for her presentation, but her mind was somewhere else entirely, on a father and daughter she'd known for only a few hours, yet who had managed to stir something inside her soul. She kept seeing Malik's tired but kind eyes, the way he'd spoken about his late wife with such love and sorrow, the way Zuri had looked at him with complete trust. It wasn't pity she felt, it was admiration. Her mind drifted to her own parents, her mother's last voicemail asking when she might come for dinner, her father's quiet disappointment each time she canceled. She realized how many calls she hadn't returned, how many birthdays she'd missed, how many times she'd chosen work over the people who had once been her world. She thought of the hundreds of employees she led, people with families, with struggles, and how little she truly knew about their lives. For the first time in a long time, her achievements felt small, empty. The next morning, she woke early, but not for work. She sat by the window with a cup of coffee, staring at the sunrise breaking over the city. Her mind was clear, her heart strangely heavy. That afternoon, while others from her company attended networking events, Sana made 3 phone calls. First, to her accountant, second, to her lawyer, and third, to her parents. When her mother answered, her voice carried both surprise and emotion. Sana, is that really you? Hi, Mom, Sana said softly. I miss you. There was silence, then the sound of quiet crying on the other end. We miss you too, baby. I'll come by soon, Sana promised. I mean it this time. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about what Malik had said. We all need a little help sometimes. 3 weeks later, Malik came home from work, exhausted but content, to find a large envelope in his mailbox. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind that looked official. Curious, he tore it open right there by the kitchen counter as Zuri hummed at the table, coloring with her crayons. Inside was a handwritten letter. He read the first line and froze. Dear Malik, I haven't stopped thinking about our flight. He sat down heavily, his eyes scanning the elegant handwriting. In just a few hours, you reminded me what kindness looks like. You shared your story, your love for your daughter, and your strength. You gave more than you knew, and you helped me find something I'd lost: perspective. Enclosed is something that might help with Zuri's education. Please don't think of it as charity. Think of it as an investment in kindness. You gave me a gift I can never repay, but I want to pass it forward in the only way I know how. With deep gratitude and respect. Sana Price. Malik's hands trembled as he unfolded the check tucked inside. His breath caught. $25,000, made out to Malik Rivers, with a simple note in the memo line, for Zuri's future. He stared at it for a long time. Zuri looked up from her crayons. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Malik swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "Because, sweetheart," he said, his voice breaking, "there are good people in this world. Really, really good people." Zuri smiled. "Like you." He hugged her close, his voice shaking. "No, baby, better." He looked at the check again, his heart full. For years, he'd carried the weight of loss and responsibility, believing kindness like that only existed in stories. But here it was, written in black ink, wrapped in sincerity. That night, Malik sat quietly on the couch after putting Zuri to bed. The house was still except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. The check lay on the table in front of him, glowing softly under the dim light. He read the letter again and again, each time feeling the same lump rise in his throat. He didn't know how to process what he was feeling. Gratitude, disbelief, and something deeper, hope. For so long, life had been about survival. Bills, work, exhaustion. But now, for the first time since Aisha's passing, the future didn't look like a mountain he had to climb alone. He looked at the picture of Aisha on the wall, her warm smile, her bright eyes. "You see this, baby?" he whispered. "Someone out there saw us, really saw us." He imagined what she would have said, probably something teasing like, "See, Malik, told you good people still exist." He smiled through his tears. The next morning, Malik called the school and paid Zuri's tuition in full for the next few years. When he told the administrator, his voice trembled with emotion. The woman on the phone congratulated him and said, "Your daughter is very lucky, Mr. Rivers." Malik smiled softly. "No," he said, "I'm the lucky one." When Zuri came home from school that day, Malik hugged her a little longer than usual. She giggled and asked, "What's that for?" "For everything," he said. "For being my sunshine." In the following weeks, life began to change for both Malik and Sana, though neither of them could have predicted how much. For Malik, the world felt lighter. He no longer worked the second job on weekends. He spent evenings helping Zuri with her homework, reading bedtime stories, and visiting the park where she'd ride the swings and laugh like the child she was meant to be. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to breathe. For Sana, something fundamental had shifted too. She returned to her office the following Monday, but the glass walls and high-rise view didn't feel the same. She looked around at her team, people she used to see as names on schedules, and now she saw faces, lives, families. She noticed the single mother in accounting who always stayed late, the janitor who greeted everyone with a tired smile, the young intern who looked nervous every time she passed by. She started leaving work at 5 instead of 8. She began calling her parents regularly. Sunday dinners became a habit again, laughter around a table she had once been too busy to sit at. Her mother noticed the change immediately. "You seem different," she said one evening, spooning mashed potatoes onto her plate. Sana smiled softly. "I think I finally remembered what matters." In her free time, she began donating quietly, funding scholarships for single parents, creating programs for children who had lost one or both parents. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because of one small act of kindness that had reminded her what compassion looked like. Every few weeks, she'd text Malik to check in. It started with simple messages, "How's Zuri? How's work?" And over time, their conversations grew longer, warmer. Soon there were phone calls that lasted hours, where they talked about everything from childhood memories to the meaning of happiness. Zuri would sometimes appear on the screen during their video calls, proudly showing off her drawings or the stars she'd earned at school. "Miss Sana, look," she'd say, holding up her artwork. "Daddy says you're his friend." Sana would laugh, her heart full. "That's right, sweetheart, I am." One evening, about 6 months after the flight, Malik called her unexpectedly. "Hey," he said, his voice calm but warm. Zuri just went to bed. I was thinking about something you said on the plane. Oh, what was that? You said you thought success would make you happy. Sana smiled faintly. Yeah, I remember. You still feel that way? She paused, thinking. No, she said softly. Not anymore. I think I finally understand that real success isn't about what you own. It's about what you give, what you share, who you become. Malik was quiet for a moment, then said, You've changed my life, Sana. I hope you know that. Her throat tightened. I think it was mutual, she replied. They both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that only comes from genuine connection. 8 months after that flight, Sana was invited to speak at a leadership conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. The event was filled with CEOs, investors, and entrepreneurs, people who lived the same kind of life she once had. When she was asked about the most important lesson she'd learned in her career, she didn't mention business models or growth strategies. Instead, she took a deep breath and told the story of Flight 192, of a cold morning in Atlanta. A stranger with kind eyes and a little girl with a pink unicorn backpack. The audience grew silent as she spoke. She told them about falling asleep on Malik's shoulder, about the power bank, about his story and the quiet strength he carried. She told them how that brief meeting had reminded her that kindness still exists, and how success without compassion is just another kind of emptiness. Her voice grew steadier as she continued. Sometimes, she said, the smallest acts of kindness can change a life. A charger, a shoulder to lean on, a story shared at 30,000 feet. These moments matter more than any deal or title ever will. The audience was completely still. Even the most hardened executives were leaning forward, listening. I thought I had everything, she said. The company, the money, the respect. But I was empty. It took a man who'd lost everything to show me what it really means to be rich. Not rich in money, rich in love, in purpose, in the things that actually matter when life slows down and you realize what's been missing. When she finished speaking, the crowd stood and applauded. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. Others simply nodded, lost in thought. For the first time, Sana wasn't being celebrated as a CEO. She was being seen as a human being. After stepping off the stage, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Malik. Just wanted to say thank you again. Zuri got her report card today, straight A's. She says she wants to be a pilot so she can help people get to the ones they love. Sana smiled through tears as she typed back, Tell her I believe in her, and thank you for believing in me. His reply came seconds later. Always, that's what friends do. Sana stared at that word again, friends. It still made her heart swell. Sana sat quietly in her hotel room that night, still thinking about that message. That's what friends do. It had been years since anyone had used that word with her and truly meant it. In her world, friendships were often just partnerships in disguise, built around deals, opportunities, or mutual gain. But with Malik, it was different. There were no expectations, no pretense, just honesty. She realized she didn't have to prove anything to him. He already saw her, not the CEO. Not the woman in designer suits, but the person underneath it all. A few weeks later, they spoke again over video chat. Malik sat at his kitchen table while Zuri worked on her math homework in the background. She's been obsessed with planes lately, Malik said, chuckling. Keeps telling everyone she's gonna be a pilot. Sana smiled. I love that. She'll make a great one someday. She's got her father's determination. Let's hope she gets her mother's patience, he said softly. Then he paused, looking down for a moment. You know, I used to hate that word, patience. I wanted everything to get better fast. I wanted the pain to stop right away. But grief doesn't work like that. It's slow. It teaches you things you didn't ask to learn. Sana nodded gently. I think loneliness does that too. It teaches you how much you need others, even when you've convinced yourself you don't. They shared a long, comfortable silence after that. The kind that only exists between people who understand each other. In the months that followed, Sana and Malik's bond quietly grew stronger. They spoke often, sometimes about deep things, sometimes about nothing at all. He'd tell her funny stories about Zuri's school days or the time she tried to make pancakes and nearly set off the smoke alarm. Sana would share little updates about her parents, how she'd started visiting them every Sunday, how her mom insisted on packing leftovers she never asked for but always ate later. It wasn't romance. It wasn't anything she could label. It was connection, pure and simple. Sana noticed changes in herself. She smiled more often, laughed more easily. The wall around her heart, built over years of ambition and loneliness, had begun to crumble. One Friday evening, as she packed for a weekend trip to visit her parents, her phone buzzed. It was a short video from Malik. She opened it to see Zuri standing proudly in her school uniform, holding up a paper airplane. "Hi, Miss Sana," the little girl said, her voice cheerful. "I made this for you. Daddy says planes help people get to where they need to go. I hope you get where you're going to." Sana felt her eyes sting with tears. It was such a small gesture, a simple video, yet it carried so much warmth. That weekend, at her parents' house, Sana couldn't stop thinking about Malik and Zuri. During dinner, her mother noticed her smile. "You seem happier lately," she said. "What changed?" Sana hesitated, then smiled softly. "I met someone," she said. "Not in the way you think, just someone who reminded me what kindness looks like." Her father nodded approvingly. The world could use more of that. Later that night, after her parents went to bed, Sana sat outside on the porch, staring at the stars. She realized how peaceful she felt, something she hadn't experienced in years. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Malik tucked Zuri into bed. "Daddy," she whispered sleepily, "do you think angels send people to help us sometimes?" Malik smiled and brushed a curl from her forehead. "Yeah, baby, I think they do. Like Miss Sana?" He paused, smiling faintly. "Maybe exactly like Miss Sana." Zuri grinned and hugged her bunny close. "I like her. She makes you smile more." Malik laughed quietly. "Yeah, she does that." As the days turned into weeks, their lives continued, separate but somehow connected. Malik worked fewer hours now, spending more time volunteering at Zuri's school. He'd become known as the super dad who helped with reading sessions and school fairs. Sana, on the other hand, began mentoring young entrepreneurs, people who reminded her of the dreamer she once was. Her company flourished, but her priorities shifted. She no longer measured her worth by profits, but by the impact she created. One evening, she attended a charity gala in New York. During her speech, she spoke about kindness, about how a single, selfless act could change everything. She didn't mention names, but she didn't need to. Her voice carried the truth of her experience. "Kindness," she said to the audience, "doesn't have to be grand or loud. It can be as simple as lending a shoulder to a stranger on a flight. You never know how much that moment might mean to someone." The crowd applauded, but Sana barely heard them. In her mind, she was back on flight to 192, the hum of the engines, the warmth of Malik's shoulder, the soft breathing of a little girl beside him. After the event, as she sat in her hotel room, her phone buzzed with a video message. It was from Malik again. This time, Zuri was in her pajamas, holding a drawing up to the camera. "Look, Miss Sana, it's you and Daddy on an airplane. Daddy says you were sleeping." She giggled. "I made you both smile." Malik appeared behind her, laughing. "She's been working on that all week," he said. "Said she wanted to make sure you didn't forget about us." Sana's laughter broke into tears. "I could never forget you too," she said softly. "Good," Malik replied with that easy warmth she'd come to know so well. "Because we're kind of fond of you too." That night, after their call ended, Sana looked at the little paper planes Uri had made for her. She placed it on her desk beside her work files, right next to the framed photo of her parents. It was a reminder that success was never about how high she flew, but about who she carried with her on the way up. And for the first time in her life, she truly felt whole. A few months later, Sana found herself standing backstage at another conference, this one in Dallas. She had given dozens of talks in her career, but this one felt different. She wasn't here to impress investors or sell ideas. She was here to speak from the heart. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage to the sound of polite applause. She looked out at the audience, hundreds of faces waiting for something inspiring, and smiled softly. "Not long ago," she began, "I was on a flight from Atlanta to Washington, D.C. I sat next to a man and his little girl. I didn't know it then, but that short flight would change my life forever. The room grew silent. She told them about that morning, the cold airport, her exhaustion, her guarded heart. She spoke about Malik's quiet patience, about the small act of kindness that started it all, plugging in her phone when it was about to die. She told them about Zuri, her big curls, her wide eyes, her pure love for her father. And she told them how a stranger's kindness had reminded her that success without compassion isn't success at all. Her voice was calm but steady, carrying the weight of every emotion she had lived since that day. Sometimes, she said, you meet people for a reason, not to teach them something, but because you need to learn. I thought I had everything, power, money, respect, but I'd forgotten how to be human. It took a man who'd lost everything to remind me what it means to be rich, not in money, but in love, empathy, and purpose. She paused, looking around the hall. The smallest acts, lending a charger, offering a shoulder, can change a life. They can remind someone who they were before the world made them hard. They can wake you up when you've been sleepwalking through your own life. The audience was silent, fully absorbed. Sana continued, her voice breaking slightly. Don't wait for your wake-up call. Don't wait until you're asleep on a stranger's shoulder to realize how much of your life you've missed. Look around you. See the people you've stopped seeing. Value the things you've stopped valuing. Because in the end, it's not what we own that defines us, it's what we give, and who we become in the process. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. People stood, many wiping tears from their eyes. She wasn't just a business leader anymore. She was human, raw, and real, and that's what moved them most. After the conference, she sat in a quiet lounge, her phone buzzing softly. It was a message from Malik. Just wanted to say thank you again, it read. Zuri got her report card today. Straight A's. She says she wants to be a pilot someday. Says she wants to help people get to the ones they love. Sana smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. Tell her I believe in her, she replied. And thank you for believing in me. His response came seconds later. Always. That's what friends do. She leaned back in her seat, phone pressed to her heart, and exhaled slowly. Friends. Such a simple word, but to her, it meant everything. Later that evening, back in her hotel room, she picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in a long time. Mom? Her mother's voice cracked with surprise. Sana, sweetheart, is everything okay? Sana smiled. Everything's more than okay, Mom. I just wanted to ask if you and Dad could come visit me next weekend. I miss you. Her mother was quiet for a moment, then said softly, we'd love that, baby. We'd love that so much. When she hung up, Sana walked to the window. The Dallas skyline shimmered under the night sky, lights blinking like tiny stars on the horizon. She stood there, thinking about how strange and beautiful life could be, how a random seat assignment on a random flight could alter the entire course of her heart. She thought about Malik and Zuri, about how their kindness had rippled through her life in ways they might never fully understand. And she smiled, realizing that maybe kindness doesn't just ripple, maybe it soars. Over the following year, their friendship continued to blossom. There were visits now, not just calls. Sana met Zuri again, this time on the ground, at a small park in Atlanta. The little girl ran up and hugged her tightly, her curls bouncing in the sunlight. You came, Zuri said, grinning from ear to ear. Of course I did, Sana replied, laughing as she hugged her back. I promised, didn't I? Malik stood a few feet away, smiling that same calm, grateful smile she'd seen on the plane. She's been talking about this all week, he said. They spent the afternoon together, talking, laughing, sharing stories. Malik grilled burgers while Zuri ran circles around them, with her bunny in one hand and a juice box in the other. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't planned, but it was perfect. As the sun dipped below the trees, Zuri climbed onto her father's shoulders. Look, Miss Sana, she called. I can see everything from up here. Sana laughed, watching them, a father and daughter silhouetted against the fading light. She thought back to that first flight, to the woman she'd been, tired, guarded, and lonely. Now she was lighter, freer, finally awake. That night, when she got back to her hotel, She sat by the window and whispered a quiet thank you to fate, to Malik, to the small twist of life that had put her in seat 1 that morning in Atlanta. She realized something beautiful then. The greatest meetings in life aren't the ones we schedule in boardrooms. They're the ones that happen when we least expect them, in crowded airports, in shared seats, in brief moments when we let our walls down. Maybe kindness doesn't just change others. Maybe it changes us first. She smiled to herself, imagining the little paper planes Uri had made for her still resting on her desk back home. A reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures carry us the farthest. And as she turned off the lights and looked out over the quiet city, one last thought warmed her heart. Maybe falling asleep on a stranger's shoulder was never an accident at all. Maybe it was life's way of waking her up to what truly matters. If this story touched your heart, take a moment today to show kindness to a friend, a stranger, or even yourself. You never know whose life you might be changing.